In our last episode, we talked about how your own brain works against you, the cognitive errors that feel like strengths, the patterns that feel like careful thinking, but quietly drain everything you've built. And if that was uncomfortable, I want you to prepare yourself, because what we're covering today is worse. Today we're not talking about the enemy inside. We're talking about the people outside who already know about that enemy, who have studied it, who have mapped it, and who have decided, deliberately and methodically, to use it against you. There is a specific category of people in this world who look at your intelligence and do not see something to be respected. They see something to be operated. They see a system with known inputs and predictable outputs. They see a machine they can run without owning. And the most disturbing part is that they are often the people closest to you, the ones you trust, the ones who know you best. Because knowing you best is exactly what makes you exploitable. This is not a fringe phenomenon. This is not something that only happens to naive people or weak people. In fact, the research on this is unambiguous. High-intelligence individuals are disproportionately targeted by a specific class of social predators, not despite their intelligence, because of it. Because intelligent people have very specific, very reliable vulnerabilities. And people who are good at exploiting others learn those vulnerabilities, the way a locksmith learns locks. Today we're going to name two of the most common types. We're going to describe exactly how they operate. And then we're going to talk about the only defense that actually works. Let's start with the first one. And I want you to think carefully about whether you've met this person, because you almost certainly have. And there's a good chance you didn't recognize them for what they were at the time. We'll call them the Complexity Salesman. The Complexity Salesman is, at their core, a person who sells confusion. Not directly, not obviously. They sell it dressed up as sophistication, as expertise, as exclusive access to something the average person couldn't possibly understand. And the reason they target intelligent people specifically is because intelligent people are uniquely susceptible to exactly this kind of pitch. Here's how it works. In the last episode, we talked about complexity bias, the brain's tendency to distrust simple answers and assign more credibility to explanations that are layered, difficult, and require real effort to follow. The Complexity Salesman has internalized this. They may not have a name for it, but they've learned it through experience. They've discovered that when they present a simple product, intelligent people get skeptical. They think it's too easy. They think they're being condescended to. They walk away. So the Complexity Salesman does something brilliant and completely cynical. They make the product impossible to understand. Think about every financial product you've ever encountered that required a 45-minute explanation before you could even assess it. Think about the advisor who filled a whiteboard with diagrams and then looked at you and said, "It's a lot to take in, but trust me, this is how the sophisticated investors are doing it." Think about the business opportunity that had 17 revenue streams and a compensation structure that would take a spreadsheet to decode. Think about the contract that was 500 pages long for something that should have taken 2 paragraphs. Here is what all of those situations have in common. The complexity was not accidental. The complexity was the product. Because a confused buyer cannot comparison shop. A confused buyer cannot evaluate risk. A confused buyer cannot say no with confidence, because saying no requires understanding what you're saying no to. And most importantly, a confused, intelligent buyer will not admit they're confused, because admitting confusion feels like admitting failure. It feels like conceding that maybe you're not as sharp as you thought. And that feeling is completely unbearable for someone whose entire identity is built around being the person who understands things. So you nod. You ask a few pointed questions to signal that you're following. You sign. And the Complexity Salesman moves on to their next target, having sold you not a product, not a service, not an investment, but a feeling. The feeling of being sophisticated. The feeling of operating at a level most people can't reach. And that feeling cost you something real. The specific version of this that has destroyed more wealth for more intelligent people than almost any other single mechanism is predatory. Complexity in financial products. Structured notes. Leveraged ETFs with daily reset mechanisms. Crypto yield strategies built on protocols that require a computer science degree to audit. Alternative investments with lockup periods buried in footnote 17. Variable annuities with fee structures that would require a law degree to fully untangle. None of these products are sold to people who don't understand them by accident. They are specifically designed to be complex enough that the buyer feels flattered, to be considered for them, confused enough that the buyer can't accurately assess the costs, and prestigious enough that the buyer feels foolish rejecting them. The defense against the complexity. Salesman is so simple, it almost feels like it couldn't work, but it does. Every time, without exception. If you cannot explain the core logic of what you're being sold in 3 sentences or less, walk away. Not because simple things are always better, but because if someone cannot explain what they're selling you in 3 sentences, one of 2 things is true. Either they don't understand it themselves, which means you are about to buy something nobody understands, or they understand it perfectly and are deliberately preventing you from understanding it, which means you are about to buy something that only works for them. There is no third option. Weaponize your boredom. The moment an explanation starts requiring more and more scaffolding to make sense, that scaffolding is not helping you understand. It's helping them hide. Now let's talk about the second type. And this one is harder to see because it almost always comes wrapped in something that feels genuinely good. It feels like being valued. It feels like being recognized. It feels like finally someone sees what you're actually capable of. We'll call this person the validation vampire. The validation vampire has identified something that the research on high achievers confirms consistently and uncomfortably. Intelligent, capable, high-performing people very often have a specific need that operates underneath everything else. The need to be the smartest person in the room, not necessarily to be praised, not necessarily to be liked, but to be recognized as the one who gets it, the one who can handle what others can't, the one who is trusted with the hard things because they are simply built differently. And this need, which in most contexts produces extraordinary results, is also a leash, because the person who holds the other end of that leash, who knows how to pull it at exactly the right moment, does not need to pay you in money. They pay you in identity. And identity, it turns out, is a currency that intelligent people will accept at an enormous discount. Here's how the validation vampire operates in practice. They are usually someone with authority or status in your world, a boss, a senior colleague, a mentor, a client, a friend who is slightly more socially connected than you. And what they do is simple. They allocate to you the work that is hardest, most draining, most intellectually demanding, and most time-consuming. And they do it by framing it as a compliment, so perfectly constructed that refusing it feels like self-betrayal. I'm giving this to you because you're the only one I trust with it. I know this is a lot to ask, but honestly, nobody else here could handle this the way you can. You're the only one who really understands this well enough to fix it. I don't even bother asking the others, because I already know you'll figure it out. Every one of these sentences is a trap, and the mechanism of the trap is exactly this. By accepting the work, you confirm your own self-image. You prove, to yourself as much as to them, that you are the person they say you are. And by refusing, you seem to deny that identity. You seem to be saying, actually, I'm not the exceptional one you think I am. And that's a cost that many intelligent people find genuinely impossible to pay. So they take the work. They do it well, because they always do it well. And the validation vampire gets the output of an exceptional mind at the cost of a few well-timed compliments. They don't need to promote you. They don't need to pay you more. They don't need to give you credit. They just need to keep feeding you enough identity that you keep feeding them results. And here's the part that makes it particularly hard to see clearly. Some of these people genuinely like you. Some of them genuinely believe you're exceptional. Those things can be completely true at the same time as the exploitation. Someone can value your intelligence enormously and still be extracting it from you at a price that doesn't serve you. Admiration and exploitation are not mutually exclusive. In fact, the most effective version of this relationship involves both simultaneously. The signal that you're in this dynamic is not whether they praise you. It's what happens to your time, your energy, and your own priorities in service of their recognition.